My wedding day was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of my life. But my sister, Helen, had other plans. When I first told my family about my wedding date, Helen acted like she didn't mind. With a casual smile, she said, "Oh, you're having a small, simple wedding anyway, right? So, it's fine if our weddings are on the same day." At first, I thought I had misheard her. But no, she had deliberately planned her wedding for the exact same date as mine. She knew this would mean that all our relatives and family friends would be at her ceremony instead of mine. My heart sank, but I didn't say anything. I should have known better than to expect anything different from her. 3 months passed, and finally, the big day arrived. I was nervous but excited, standing in my wedding gown, surrounded by a handful of close friends. I had tried not to think about Helen, but deep down, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in my chest. Then, just as the reception was in full swing, I turned, and there she was. Helen, in her wedding dress. I blinked, unable to believe my eyes. "Helen, what's going on? Why are you here? What happened to your wedding?" She smirked, tossing her perfectly styled hair over her shoulder. "Oh, I got curious. Your reception looked like so much fun, so I came to see for myself." I clenched my fists, but I forced a smile. I wouldn't let her ruin this day for me. Let me take you back to how it all started. My name is Patricia. I'm 29 years old and have been working at the same company since I graduated high school. I started as a junior employee, but after years of hard work and dedication, I earned recognition and respect in the office. My job was fulfilling and life was good. 3 years ago, I met Ryan. He was kind, funny, and treated me in a way no one ever had before. We started dating, and with each passing day, I fell for him more. Then one evening, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. My heart pounded, my hands trembled, and for a moment, I thought I was dreaming. "But are you sure?" I blurted out without thinking. "Are you really okay with someone like me?" Ryan chuckled softly and took my hands in his. "It has to be you, Patricia. No one else." Tears welled in my eyes as I nodded. I had never been so happy. Meeting his parents. A few days later, Ryan took me to meet his parents. I was nervous, but they were warm and welcoming. "Patricia," his mother said with a smile, "it makes us so happy to have someone like you as our son's partner." I bowed my head slightly, feeling shy. "Thank you for saying that. But honestly, I'm the lucky one. There's no need to be so modest," his father chuckled. Everything was going smoothly until he said something that made my breath hitch. "I would like to meet your family as well, Patricia. It's important that both families get to know each other." My stomach twisted. "Oh, why yes, of course," I said quickly. Ryan squeezed my hand. "Patricia, if you're uncomfortable, we don't have to rush things." I forced a smile. "I'll be fine, Ryan." But the truth was, I wasn't fine. My family didn't love me. I had a reason for feeling uneasy about introducing Ryan to my family. Unlike Ryan's parents, who were kind and accepting, my own family had never treated me that way. My older sister, Helen, was breathtakingly beautiful. Even as a child, she had been admired by everyone. She worked as a child model, and in high school, she became a well-known reader model. My parents doted on her, praised her, and showered her with attention. And me? I was the quiet, ordinary daughter. The one no one paid attention to. The one who was always in Helen's shadow. No matter what I did, I could never be good enough in their eyes. That's why, deep down, I knew my wedding wouldn't be a priority for them. And when Helen chose to get married on the same day, she proved it once again. But no matter what she did, I wasn't going to let her take this moment away from me. A childhood of neglect. Growing up, I learned one painful truth. I would never be as important as my sister, Helen. She was beautiful, charming, and adored by everyone, especially our parents. Meanwhile, I was the forgotten child, the one they barely paid attention to. Since I wasn't as cute as Helen, my parents didn't see the point in spending money on me. Love and affection were things I could only watch from a distance but never experience for myself. Helen was showered with praise, forgiven for every mistake, and given anything she desired. But for me, there was nothing. If I dared to ask for something I wanted, I was scolded for being selfish. When I expressed interest in activities like music or art, I was told they were a waste of time and money. It wasn't long before I stopped asking for anything at all. While Helen had the best of everything, I had only hand-me-downs, her old clothes, her worn-out school supplies, even toys she no longer cared about. My mother cooked meals with love, but only Helen's favorite foods ever made it to the table. If I didn't like something, I had to eat it anyway. The worst part was my birthday. You would think that, at least on that one day, I would be treated with a little bit of warmth. But no. Every year, my sister received a gift on my birthday, and it was always bigger, more expensive, and more thoughtful than whatever small present I was given. It felt like a cruel joke, like a reminder that even on my special day, Helen was more important. My parents often sighed and said, "Why can't you be cute like Helen?" Their words stung. No matter how much I wanted their love, I would never be enough. Betrayal by my sister. Helen wasn't just our parents' favorite, she knew it. And because of that, she treated me however she pleased. As a child, she would take things from me just because she could. If I protested, she'd smirk and remind me that mom and dad would always take her side. And she was right. If I ever argued with her, our parents would scold me, not her. By the time we reached middle school, her cruelty had escalated. There was a boy I secretly liked, someone I never even had the courage to talk to. But somehow Helen found out. Instead of teasing me like a normal sister might, she did something worse. She approached him herself, acted charming and sweet, and within days, they were dating. She would hold his hand in front of me, giggle as she whispered things in his ear, all while glancing my way as if to say, "Look what I took from you." But that wasn't the worst part. Helen knew my secrets, things I had shared in confidence or things I had hidden deep inside. And she used them against me. Somehow, boys I had never even spoken to knew things about me, embarrassing things. At first, I couldn't figure out how, but then I saw Helen, laughing with her friends as she told stories about me, throwing out my secrets like they were nothing. I wanted to fight back, to defend myself, but I knew it would be useless. If I so much as raised my voice against Helen, our parents would come down on me like a storm. So I learned to endure. A lonely fight for recognition. Because I received no love from my family, I desperately sought validation elsewhere. I turned to my studies, hoping that if I became the best student, my parents would finally notice me. I worked harder than anyone else, staying up late, studying tirelessly, and scoring top marks on every test. One day, after months of effort, I achieved something incredible. I ranked first in my entire grade. My heart swelled with pride, and for the first time in my life, I believed my parents might finally say, "We're proud of you." Excitedly, I ran home to tell them the news. But their reaction crushed me. "Don't stand out in weird ways," my mother said flatly. "It would be embarrassing for Helen if people thought you were better than her." I froze. I had expected indifference, maybe even a half-hearted "that's nice." But this was worse than anything I could have imagined. That was the moment I realized it didn't matter what I did. I would never be good enough for them. Still, I couldn't bring myself to give up entirely. I loved learning, even if my achievements meant nothing to my family. But I was terrified of being resented even more, so I began intentionally making small mistakes on my tests. I still ranked well, but never too high, just enough to keep my position around 10th place. The dream that was stolen. Eventually, I managed to convince my parents to let me attend the best high school in town. My argument was simple. It was actually cheaper than some of the other public schools. The only reason they agreed was because they thought they were saving money. But when it came time to go to university, I didn't even get the chance to fight. "We've wasted enough money on you," my parents said. "It's time for you to start working and pay us back." My heart shattered. Unlike Helen, who had everything handed to her, I was expected to give up my dreams. My high school was filled with students who were preparing for prestigious universities, but for me, college wasn't even an option. When my teacher noticed I wasn't applying anywhere, he asked me why. I hesitated, but eventually I told him the truth. His expression darkened, his voice filled with sadness as he sighed. "I wish I could help, but it's a family matter. There's nothing I can do." And just like that, my future slipped through my fingers. I had worked so hard, only to be told it was all for nothing. Cutting ties with my family. "I'm really sorry," my teacher said, looking sad. They couldn't change my situation, but just hearing those words made me feel a little better. At least someone cared. But my teacher didn't stop there. They helped me find a job and even arranged an interview for me at the company I still work for today. I was grateful beyond words. When I told my parents that I got a job, I hoped for at least a small sign of happiness from them. Instead, they barely reacted. "Just make sure you bring in money," they said. That was all. No congratulations, no encouragement, just another reminder that to them, I was only useful if I could provide something. I felt disappointed, but instead of letting their coldness bring me down, I made a decision. I would become independent as soon as possible. I saved every penny, lived carefully, and after a few years, I finally moved out on my own. Once I left, I kept my distance from my family. At first, it felt strange, but over time, I realized I was happier without them constantly bringing me down. Facing my family again. Now that I was engaged, the idea of introducing both families made me uneasy. After years of barely speaking to my parents and sister, I wasn't sure how they would react. "It's okay," Ryan reassured me. "Just a simple chat. I don't want you to feel pressured, Patricia." Hearing his kind words, I decided maybe it's time to see them again. For the first time in years, I went back home to tell my family about my engagement. When I told them the news, my mother barely looked up. "HM? So what?" she muttered. I took a deep breath and tried again. "Ryan's family would like to meet you all." Mom groaned. "That sounds like a hassle. We're not free. There's no need for a family meeting." I expected this reaction, but it still hurt. I sighed, knowing I had no choice but to use the only method that ever worked with them. "Well," I said casually, "I was thinking of treating everyone to lunch at that fancy restaurant in town." At that moment, Helen, who had been lazily lying on the sofa, suddenly sat up. "Wait, what? That place has amazing food. I'm going." Asterisk. Hearing this, my parents' attitude changed immediately. "Oh, if Helen wants to go, then we'll go too." Just like that, they agreed to attend the family meeting, not because they cared about me, but because of the expensive meal. The family meeting. The day of the family gathering finally arrived. Ryan's parents greeted mine politely, but my family barely acknowledged them. They nodded slightly, but it was clear their minds were on something else, the food. While Ryan and his parents remained polite and mature, I could feel the awkwardness growing. I was nervous, afraid my family would embarrass me. As soon as the food arrived, my parents and Helen completely ignored everything else. "Wow, this looks amazing," my father said, eyes shining. "It smells incredible," my mother added. Helen, too, was busy enjoying her meal, paying no attention to Ryan's family. They made no effort to start a real conversation. But the moment Ryan's parents mentioned Helen, everything changed. Their eyes lit up as they started talking nonstop. "Helen is our pride and joy," my mother gushed. "She was such a beautiful child. Everyone adored her." Helen pretended to be embarrassed. "Oh, stop talking about the past," she said, laughing. But it was obvious she loved the attention. After the meal, my parents and Helen stood up quickly. "All right, we're leaving now," Mom said, without a second thought. And just like that, they left in a hurry, as if they had only come for the free food. I sat there, ashamed and frustrated. Ryan and his parents were stunned. His mother was the first to speak. "It's even worse than I imagined," she said softly. I sighed. "I'm really sorry. I know they were terrible." Ryan reached for my hand. "Patricia, this isn't your fault. In fact, I admire you. You've grown into a wonderful person despite all of this." His mother smiled warmly. "From now on, Patricia, you can think of us as your real parents." Hearing those words, I felt a warmth in my heart that I had never felt before. For the first time in my life, I realized I finally had a real family. I almost cried, but we kept preparing for our wedding. However, I was worried that my family might cause problems if we had a big wedding. So, I talked to my in-laws and suggested a small wedding with only close family. After meeting my family at the introduction event, my in-laws quickly agreed. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Helen. She had never called me before, so I felt a little uneasy. "Hello, what's up?" I asked. "I've decided to get married, too." "Huh? Oh, congratulations. I'm planning to introduce my fiancé. Come to our parents' house next Friday." Before I could say anything, Helen hung up. I had already planned a date with my fiancé that day. When I told him, he said, "It's okay, we can go after the meeting." So I decided to go quickly meet them and leave. When I saw Helen's fiancé at my parents' house, I disliked him immediately. Wow, Helen was right. "You really are plain. And just a high school graduate, huh?" he said. I was shocked. This was the first time we met, yet he spoke to me like that. I had graduated from a well-known university and worked at a famous IT company, but he looked down on me just because I wasn't from an elite background like him. "He has no connection with an ordinary and useless person like you," he added. I couldn't stand being there anymore. I picked up my things and said, "I'm leaving now." Helen suddenly called out, "Wait, we're not done talking yet." "What else?" I asked. She smirked and said, "Our weddings ended up on the same day." "What? But since you're having a small wedding, it doesn't matter, right? You said it would only be for close family." "Wait a minute. That's true, but what about our parents and relatives?" "They will all be at my wedding," she said with a grin. "You'll have a sad little wedding with none of your family there." Helen had planned her wedding on the same day as mine on purpose, just to mock me. She was truly awful, and my parents had agreed with her. I had enough. That was the moment I decided to cut ties with my family completely. When I told Ryan about it, he was shocked. Then he had an idea. "If your family won't come, why not invite lots of other people instead? There are still 3 months before the wedding. Even if we change the date, your parents won't come, and Helen just wants to make you feel small. Don't let her win," he said. His words made sense, and I felt determined to move forward without my toxic family. I suddenly remembered something about Ryan's father. "By the way, wasn't your father?" 3 months passed, and finally, our wedding day arrived. Many people attended, including our friends, co-workers, and Ryan's relatives. At the start of the ceremony, we let everyone know that my family wasn't there. Everyone supported us and told me not to let my sister or parents bring me down. Because of their kindness, the wedding had a warm and happy atmosphere. After the wedding, the reception began, and the host was full of energy since so many people had come. Our friends performed, and thanks to some connections, a professional musician played, making it an amazing celebration. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw my parents, Helen, and her husband walk in. I quickly went toward them. They looked shocked as they watched the lively reception. When they saw me coming, they also walked toward me. "What is this?" Helen asked, confused. "Huh? What happened to your wedding? Were you curious because our reception is so much fun?" I said with a little smirk. Helen's face turned red with anger. "What do you mean? Weren't you supposed to have a small ceremony with only families?" Actually, this wedding venue was a very popular and expensive place, which is why Helen had chosen the same venue as us, probably to mock me. "Why are there so many people at your reception?" she asked, looking around. "Well, our friends, co-workers, and my father-in-law's company employees are here," I explained. Helen's fiancé suddenly turned pale. "Wait, what? The groom's father's company employees?" Then he looked around in shock. "No way. Why are all the people I invited from the company here?" Helen and her husband stood there, stunned. It turned out that the company employees who were originally supposed to attend Helen's wedding chose to come to ours instead, because they actually worked for my father-in-law's company. "You mean your father-in-law's employees?" Helen's fiancé asked in disbelief. "Yes," I replied. "He just arrived." At that moment, Helen's fiancé's face froze. "The president. Why is he here?" "Well," my father-in-law said, stepping forward, "it would be strange if a father didn't attend his son's wedding. Though, it seems like some parents here have a different way of thinking. He glanced at my parents, who looked embarrassed. Then, he turned to Helen's fiancé and said, "I heard you deliberately planned your wedding on the same day as my son's. What was your reason?" Helen's fiancé immediately tried to shift the blame. "I had no idea it was your son's wedding. Besides, it wasn't my idea, it was my wife's." She said she wanted to humiliate her own sister. Helen's eyes widened in shock. "What? Why are you blaming everything on me? You also said it was fun to put down someone from a lowly high school background. You idiot. Stop talking." "Not in front of the president," her husband snapped. "It's your fault for blaming me first," Helen shouted back. Right in front of us, Helen and her fiancé started arguing like children. My father-in-law finally lost his patience. "Enough already. This is Patricia and my son's important reception." Helen's fiancé panicked and ran out as if escaping. Helen, still in her wedding dress, hurried after him. And just like that, they disappeared from our wedding. "We have always thought highly of you. Since we're already here, maybe we'll stay for the reception." Helen's wedding reception had many empty seats because all of the groom's work colleagues had canceled to attend ours. Naturally, Helen was upset, and even her friends and the groom's friends laughed at her, making her the center of the jokes. My parents, who were always so proud, looked embarrassed and angry. It seemed like their frustration made them want to mock our wedding instead. "We always knew Patricia was more reliable," they suddenly said. Hearing my parents praise me out of nowhere gave me chills. "It's useless to say anything now," I replied. "I've already decided to cut ties with you. Please leave." "What? How dare you speak to your own parents like that? Because you're in the way. Leave now." At Ryan's request, the venue staff escorted my parents out. With the troublemakers gone, we continued enjoying our reception. The night was filled with happiness and laughter again. Afterward, Helen and her fiancé broke off their engagement. After being humiliated at their wedding, their relationship fell apart. On top of that, since the groom had angered my father-in-law, who was also his boss, his chances of getting a promotion were completely ruined. Now, they're caught up in a messy argument over who should pay the engagement cancellation fees. As for my parents, after being humiliated themselves, they turned their anger toward Helen. They had always spoiled her, but now they disowned her. I heard they were furious because they had spent around $80,000 on Helen's wedding, only for it to be canceled. Honestly, my parents and Helen are both hopeless. But since I've cut ties with them, their problems are no longer my concern. Right now, I'm enjoying a happy life as a newlywed. After returning from a wonderful honeymoon with my husband, he switched jobs to work at my father-in-law's company. He's working hard to take over the business, and I've become a housewife to support him, managing our home every day. We plan to continue supporting each other and living a happy life together.